The Las Vegas Journal-Review is reporting that Matthew Stafford's camp and the Las Vegas Raiders have found common ground on what a potential contract in Vegas could look like. The question is, will the Raiders and Rams make a trade, or will Stafford elect to stay in L.A.? He wants more money from the Rams, who gave him permission to speak to other teams. So I've got a lot of ears and eyes and everything else on the ground in Indy this morning. I got Louis Riddick, I got Mike Tannenbaum, and I start with you, Dan Graziano. What are you hearing on this with Stafford?
Yeah, look, I mean, the Las Vegas Journal-Review is certainly accurate, but I would add that Matthew Stafford also knows what a contract with the New York Giants would look like at this point. He's had permission to talk to teams for a couple of weeks, and I think everything's on the table. Matthew Stafford and the Rams are at an impasse in terms of the contract negotiations. I think he is probably still hoping that they move a little bit in his direction and he ends up being able to stay there. But I think if the Rams don't, then I think he has to consider, Matthew Stafford, which offer, whether it's the Raiders, whether it's the Giants, that he would rather have. And at that point, the Rams will certainly work out a trade with whichever team that turns out to be. Greeny, I continue to think a resolution on this has to happen very soon, like within the next day or so, because all of these teams, all three of these teams, and anybody else who might have been involved in this, needs to know whether they need to move on to Plan B.
Day or so is right up my alley. So we've got the urgency that we're looking for. And Mike T, you were telling me this morning in our meeting that if you're the Rams, there's another conversation that you are having at the exact same time to make sure you got your bases covered.
Yeah, if I'm the Rams, I'm hitting pause talking to the Raiders or the Giants, and I'm talking to Aaron Rodgers, and here's why. We have a great young team. We have a lot of really good young defensive players. We need a quarterback we can win right now with. And when you look at the comparison of how they actually played last year, it's actually a lot closer than you think, Grady, when you look at this graphic. Now, look, Aaron Rodgers is 4 years older as of opening day, so that's a concern right there. But actually how they played was closer than I think people think. This is absolutely the calculation the Rams have to consider in terms of who's playing quarterback for us. So before I speak to the Raiders, before I speak to the Giants, I got to make sure that I'm on the same page with Aaron Rodgers so I know who my opening day quarterback is. I may still draft one, but in a win-now mode, I either need Stafford or Aaron Rodgers if I am the L.A. Rams.
All right, you had me at Aaron Rodgers. So, Louis Riddick, you sit back, you digest all of this. Where do you stand on this enormous story that is at its inflection point?
Yeah, I'm shocked. I'm totally shocked. And look, if I'm the Rams, I'm trying desperately to try and patch this thing up and make sure that Matthew Stafford understands just how important he has been to us in the recent past and how important he is to us in the not too distant future. Maybe looking 2 to 3 years out here. Look, I've never heard a coach other than maybe Jim Harbaugh, when he is talking about his quarterbacks, when he's talking about Justin Herbert in particular, talk about a quarterback the way Sean McVay talks about Matthew Stafford in terms of his mental horsepower, his physical skills, and his ability to uplift everyone else around him. Look, Matthew Stafford, by the time his career is over the next 2 or 3 years, he's going to be top 4 or 5 in career passing yards in the history of the game in career passing touchdowns. This guy, to me, is in the Hall of Fame discussion. To me, he's a surefire Hall of Famer right now. And if I'm projecting 2 to 3 years out right now, if I'm him, I want to stay in L.A. And if I'm L.A., I desperately want to keep him there. Do we remember some of the throws that he made last year? There's really been no slippage in my estimation in terms of the way this guy plays. And look, I've been one of the people who said if this doesn't work out, that Aaron Rodgers really should look for a place like Los Angeles. And Los Angeles should, because that's exactly what he needs at this point in time. He needs a coach like Sean McVay. But if I'm the Rams right now, I'm just no way letting this get to this point, and I'm letting him get out the door. And if I'm Matthew Stafford, I want to stay in L.A. But we know how these kind of things go. They get very personal, and people get offended. And next thing you know, you have blockbuster trades.
Go ahead, Mike.
Greeny, I agree with what Lewis is saying, but there's another really interesting aspect to it. If I'm Les Snead and Sean McVay of the Rams, I'm calling up Matthew Stafford and saying, hey, we have a good thing going here. You've made, according to our research, $364 million in your career. And whatever more Vegas or the Giants are offering, after taxes, is it really worth leaving us? Last year, we protected you at the 6th best rate in the NFL. And as Coach Parcells would say, quarterbacks are put on this planet with only so many hits in their body. And I've been around aging quarterbacks from Brett Favre to Vinny Testaverde. They don't like to get hit. So, Matthew, I know there's more money out there, but really, after taxes, what is that going to change in your life? We're going to protect you really well, and we have a meaningful chance to win. We were 20 yards away from being the Eagles last year.
That's the other part of it for me, Lewis. Is if I'm the Rams, I'm basically saying to Matt Stafford, do you really want to finish your career on these teams that are clearly not, look, say what you will, the Giants and the Raiders are not championship caliber teams. They're not particularly close. The Rams are. That's a bluff I could see them considering calling, Lewis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that, you know what, and Grady, I wouldn't even really characterize it as a bluff. I mean, that's just the facts. And I think Matthew understands that too. I think he knows as well his best option, the best place for him to win and continue to build his legacy and kind of put a period on his Hall of Fame resume is in Los Angeles. But like I said, we know how these things get very personal. This guy feels as though he deserves more, and I understand that. I get that. But you're right on the Rams. The Rams are the best place for him to be. I'm just hoping that it all comes together, that he stays there. I would not want to see him change teams at this point in his career. I just think it would end bad for him, quite honestly.
Graz, super quick final word. Graz, go.
Yeah, I think that's what has to happen. The next thing that has to happen, and I think it will here in the coming days, Matthew Stafford and the Rams need to get together one final time and see if they can find some common ground. And if they can't, then I think they need to start talking about what trade compensation is and whether Aaron Rodgers or somebody else is the Rams' fallback option.
It is remarkable that we have gotten here, and we'll see if we get all the way by the end of the day. Coming up. Back on Get Up, back to the NFL. The Las Vegas Journal-Review is reporting that Matthew Stafford's camp and the Las Vegas Raiders have found common ground on what a potential contract in Vegas could look like. The question is, will the Raiders and Rams make a trade, or will Stafford elect to stay in L.A.? He wants more money from the Rams, who gave him permission to speak to other teams, and he is utilizing that permission. We have our squad rolling in Indianapolis this morning at the Combine, where all the action is taking place. Lewis is up, Mike Tannenbaum is up, and Graziano, I start with you. What can you tell us about the latest on Stafford here, particularly with regard to a timetable?
I think the timetable is going to be pretty quick here, Greeny. I mean, these teams are all going to need to know what happens with Matthew Stafford, so the ones that don't end up with him can pivot to their plan B, plan C at quarterback. Right now, the Rams are still in a position where they haven't offered Matthew Stafford what he wants. He has, as you mentioned, been given permission to talk to other teams, and he and his representatives have been doing that for a couple of weeks. They know what the deal would be if he were traded to the Raiders. They know what the deal would be if he were traded to the Giants. So the question is, can he work it out with the Rams? And if not, which team does he want to go to? And at that point, the Rams will work with that team to figure out trade compensation. But I think what has to happen here, and it has to happen in the next day or so, is Matthew Stafford and the Rams need to huddle again, figure out if they can work this out. And if not, they go their separate ways and he ends up in Las Vegas or New Jersey.
Look, it's all fun to speculate on all the places he could go. We've been doing that all morning long. Mike Tannenbaum, there was one question I feel like asking. How did either side let it get to this? If you're Matthew Stafford, I can't think of a better situation to be in than where you are. If you're the Rams, I can't think of a better option to have at quarterback than Matthew Stafford. Why are we where we are? Literally, potentially, a day where Matthew Stafford could wind up going to the Raiders.
Yeah, Greta, I could not agree with you more. And Graz alluded to the last hour, maybe there's scar tissue from a year ago, but when both sides look at it in an honest and sober way, if I'm the Rams, again, Greeny, 20 yards away from being the Eagles last year, this team is right there, right now. Don't mess it up. Aaron Rodgers could be a Band-Aid, but he's 4 years older. And again, if you're Matthew Stafford, you've made over $350 million. Why would you go someplace else when you're well protected and you have a chance to really, in a meaningful way, compete for a championship? So all this speculation makes no sense to me whatsoever from either side.
Lewis?
Yeah, look, only Matthew Stafford knows why he feels the way he does in terms of being disrespected or feeling as though he's not, I shouldn't say disrespected, feeling as though he's not appreciated enough in Los Angeles, and therefore he feels as though his salary needs to be hiked and he needs a pay raise and he needs to be shown more respect in terms of dollars, in terms of actual dollars in his pocket. Only he knows why that is the case. Because from my experience in having talked to the people out there, covered their games, called their games, got a good feel for what the relationship is like between Sean and Matthew, this is like the perfect match. I mean, these two were made for one another. They're both football like junkies, so to speak. They speak the game on the same wavelength. They both play the game with that same kind of fire, that same kind of like match that you're looking for ideally. To break that up right now simply because you can't bridge this gap between how Matthew feels he needs to be compensated, and from a team perspective, what you feel is fair and doesn't necessarily blow up your salary cap structure. To not be able to bridge that just seems so bizarre to me, especially in a time in the NFL where every team is like dying to have this kind of relationship between their organization and a franchise quarterback. Everyone would love to have this kind of situation. I mean, obviously, it's the reason why teams like the Giants and the Raiders so desperately would love to get their hands on a guy like Matthew Stafford, because they're hoping they could maybe formulate the same kind of relationship. So for LA to kind of let this disintegrate, for Matthew to let this disintegrate and blow up, that would be just absolutely shocking to me and crushing to me, especially when we spend so much time talking about everyone's pursuit of this kind of relationship, this kind of situation. They've got it right where they want it in Los Angeles. Don't get it. Don't mess it up.
And Graziano, just super quickly to put a ribbon on it here, the report here is that he's worked out terms or whatever that might be with the Raiders. We believe he's done the same with the Giants too, right?
I do. I believe he knows what his contract would be if he ended up with the Giants and with the Raiders. My guess is they would be quite similar. So, yes, I really just think it's a matter of him figuring out if he wants to stay with the Rams or not. How'd they let it get this far? Last year, they moved $5 million forward from future years. They put a Band-Aid on a situation that they knew they were going to have to fix eventually, and I think that's where a lot of the bad blood is.
Okay, we'll see if they're able to work that out.
How's it going, everybody? Villa Sports Network here. Just want to thank you guys for your support on the channel. Thank you guys for watching the video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Also want to kindly remind you to don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment on the video if you like as well. But regardless of the fact, thank you again for your support, and hope to see you on the next video.